Welcome to Podland, the last word in podcasting news. It's Thursday, the 26th of May, 2022. I'm James Cridland, the editor of podnews.net.
And I'm Sam Sethi, the MD of River Radio, the podcaster's radio station.
I'm Alberto Betella from RSS.com.
I'm Jason Carter, and I'll be on to talk to you about the podcast show later.
Hello, I'm Jack. I'm from Shaw, and a bit later, I'm going to be talking about our microphones for podcasting.
And I'm Jessica Cordova-Kramer from Lemonada Media, and later I'll be talking about audio reality.
They all will. Podland is sponsored by Buzzsprout, podcast hosting made easy. Last week, 3,151 people started a podcast with Buzzsprout. You can too at buzzsprout.com. And by Squadcast, the remote recording studio that your audience will love. Squadcast lets you create high-quality audio and video content just using your browser. You can give it a try at squadcast.com. And we're also sponsored this week by Wild Turkey, the Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey that's a drink for everybody, seemingly.
Do we have to drink every time you say a certain word? James, Podland is where James and I review the latest news from the podcast industry. And this week, James, we're at the podcast show here in London, in the Shaw studio.
We are indeed in the Shaw studios, and that's why I'm sounding very much like Michael Jackson on this Shaw MV7. No, Michael Jackson sounds nothing like this. But yes, so thank you for Shaw for helping us with that. It's really appreciative. And what a great show, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I thought the best thing to do, let's start off with reviewing the show. You've been here for both days. You've done a couple of keynote speeches. What's your impression of the whole show?
Oh, it's a tremendous show. It's really, really big. We'll hear from Jason Carter in just a minute with the final number of the amount of people that have been here today. But what a great large show. What a great positive show for podcasting. It's been a really enjoyable show. Alberto's here from RSS.com. How have you found the show, Alberto?
I find it very compelling, and I'm very happy to be in the old continent for once instead of flying on the other side of the pond.
Yes, no, absolutely. No, but it's been great. It's been great to see lots of friendly people, and and lots of great new ideas as well.
Now, there've been some big announcements here at the show. One of those was a Norwegian startup called Namono. They released a sound capsule. What's that all about, James?
Yeah, it's a fantastic thing. It's called a Namono sound capsule. It's basically got 4 microphones. It's got a sort of a central box that records room tone so that it can do some clever sound reduction. Such a clever thing. And I looked at it and I thought, well, this is really cool. This is really nice. I quite like one of these. How much is it? And then I asked how much it was. And yes, many thousands. I think at over $3,000.
So when you go home and you say to the wife, what did I get for you? She may not be impressed.
I don't think we'll be getting one of those.
Some of the other announcements, Sony Music made an announcement. They did the Mark Kermode and Simon Mayo show over on Tuesday night. Had over 1,000 people go to that. But they've made a few announcements here as well at the show. What did they talk about?
Yeah, so Kermode and Mayo's Take is now the most popular Apple Podcasts subscription in the UK. That's the Take 2, the paid-for version. The company's also announced a new podcast subscription channel with full seasons of shows called The Binge, which is launching on June the 6th. So some good announcements from them. Also some announcement from Spotify today, who announced their new call to action cards for podcasters are being rolled out to the UK and to Australia and a few other places as well, which is really good. So basically, as you're listening to a show on Spotify, if you hear an ad for I don't know, maybe a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey that you would like to buy, then you can press that button and away you go. So really good to end up seeing that. I caught up with the founder of the show, Jason Carter, just about half an hour ago to ask him how it went.
Over the moon, absolutely over the moon with it. The feedback we've had, both from partners that have come to the show, international visitors, and you just have to look on the social media threads and on the message board of the app. I run a lot of events. You always get a niggle, you always get a bit of a whinge, and I keep going into the guys that are doing the social media to say, come on, what we got, and it's all positive. So pleased with it, and it's just people seem to be having a great time here. So
Yeah, it's a really, really big event, and I think that's it's a great venue as well. And I think that certainly everybody that I've been talking to has been saying what a positive event it is, and how it's really shown that podcasting is here and podcasting is now.
Yeah, and I think a number of things there really. From the very start, our kind of ambition was to create an event, of course. All the important talks and panels and sessions, etc. Try to be as open as an event as we could be. So not just having, a large proportion of the traditional sort of broadcast community here, but really striving to get those other audiences in. So having lots of new creators, and you've seen the Creators Corner that we've had for 2 days, which is business advice to people that are just starting out. Having those guys, obviously having the big wigs coming in from wherever. I'm super pleased that we're seeing. One thing that really got me quite excited was on the eve of the show, seeing posts with people boarding planes from Denmark, Germany. One of the guys actually in the social media team put a thing out on Instagram saying, "Where are you coming from?" And we got Mexico, India, Holland, Germany. I'm on the red eye from New York. And I met you out in Podcast Movement. And back then in LA, 6 weeks ago, whenever it was, I was actually quite kind of humbled by the amount of people, industry people, that were talking about our show in London. So I was feeling like, no pressure, got to get this right. But I was convinced that the location, the venue, it's quite a unique venue, isn't it? It's not like a traditional convention centre. And I thought that in itself would really bring it alive.
Yeah, I think it's really helped, and actually just having daylight inside the venue has been really good. What sort of numbers have you seen?
So we're probably drying up now in terms of sales on the door, given we've only got a couple of hours to go. But last check was it was over I'll give you a specific figure. It was 5,296 the last time I checked. So over 5,000 people, which we are absolutely delighted to have through the door. And of course, people have trusted in us with the the big partners like the YouTubes and Spotify's, Amazon Music's, and everyone else that are here. That the event has never happened before, so a big commitment from them for evening shows, big activations on the floor that we've all seen, and their commitment to talks and panels. So no pressure, serious pressure, just in making sure that we could get some significant numbers through. So they're all delighted and they all want to come back. So we're very happy. And actually, what's quite pleasing is that the people that we couldn't quite convince, which I won't name, have said that, God, we probably made a mistake, and can we look at a space next year? So we feel like we're in rude health, really.
So you say next year, so it's coming back?
Certainly coming back, yeah. So we'll be back next May, and we've already been the last 2 days we've already been sort of rebooking people into the show already. So. Yeah, we'll definitely be back. We want to develop things. There's things to finely tune that we need to do. As you would have experienced, we've tried to obviously delivering the conference element, but a lot of thought and effort into what we produce, even the music in between the sessions and the graphics that we do, the evening program, 15 or so shows across the week. We'll certainly double that next year in terms of what happens across the week. So. Coming back, bigger and better, really.
And in terms of other countries, I think what's been exciting about this is seeing how big podcasting is in the UK. Any plans to take this to other countries as well?
Quite like to visit you over in Brisbane and drop one over there, but I don't want to step on your on your toes, really. Who knows? Look, we've got to focus on delivering a quality event here. It is year one. There are things to fine tune, and I think for now we need to just continue to grow what we're doing here. I'd love a world where we'd be in 2 other places, but one step at a time.
Many congratulations. It's a great event.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your endless support, both with Pod News, but also, how many sessions did you moderate? You are the king of moderation.
I did 4, but the best news was that somebody came up to me afterwards and said, really well prepared, which I thought I thought excellent.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much, and thanks for all your support.
Jason Carter, who I spoke to, he's a very happy and I think relieved man. It's a great event. So many congratulations.
I think whenever you go put yourself on a limb like this, you never know what's going to happen, who's going to turn up, who's going to attend. Hopefully, it'll be bigger and better next year.
Yeah, indeed.
Now, Buzzsprout, who sponsor this podcast, they've also made a big announcement. What have they talked about, James?
Well, they're going to make a big announcement next week, I think. So this week we have learnt that they have a thing called Buzzsprout Ads, which is in beta. And if you're listening to this podcast and you will all of a sudden hear an ad for a different podcast, that's because we've turned it on this podcast just for a little bit of fun. What it does is it apparently automatically finds the right place for a mid-roll ad, so we can't actually tell it where we would like a mid-roll ad to be because it's automatically finding the right place for that mid-roll ad, but it's also working out how many mid-roll ads it can actually stick in. I've only approved 2 different shows for this podcast, so you may hear 2 different ads.
Wild turkey then.
And if you do, there will be lots of people very confused as to why we're talking about wild turkey. It'll become clear in a minute. And when you do hear those ads, then we will get 1.4 cents, that's US cents, per download. So if you're with Buzzsprout, there's eligibility in your dashboard. And I believe that the official announcement is next week, which is why it's still a bit stealth and a bit interesting. But so we'll probably have either Alban or Kevin on next week. They're here as well, actually.
Yeah, I haven't seen. Well, I saw Kevin the other night, but I haven't seen Alban. Now, it was interesting that they're paying in fiat currency, and I'm surprised they didn't pay in sats.
Yeah, yes, it's probably for the better.
Okay. Now, one of the next stories we want to talk about is the US largest publisher, SiriusXM, has acquired a new company, Team Coco. Who are Team Coco, James?
Well, Team Coco is Conan O'Brien's podcast company. So Conan O'Brien, you may remember as the ginger-haired person that was supposed to take over from David Letterman and didn't, or something. It was all a big thing. Anyway, Conan O'Brien, very good podcaster, has Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. That's one of the Team Coco shows, and they were I think doing it for themselves, but they are now they've signed a deal with SiriusXM. For the next, they've signed a deal with SiriusXM for Team Coco. So Team Coco is now part of SiriusXM, and separately, Conan O'Brien, because he's talent, has entered a 5-year talent agreement with the company. The deal is worth $150 million. Not quite sure whether that's the Conan bit or the Team Coco bit, but whatever it is, that's a pretty good deal, and that's not the only deal, is it?
No. WTF, I won't say it because we need to stay in the clean, not explicit version of this podcast, with Mark Maron. He's signed with Acast.
Yes, he has. WTF, which as we all know stands for What's That For? Has signed with Acast. It's that's a Peter Serafinovich joke, I should just point out. Anyway, it's a 13-year-old show. It's got 55 million listens a year. 25th most popular show in the US. So, a big deal for Acast. Acast's stand is literally just behind where I am sitting at the moment. I chatted to Ross Adams earlier on, and he's delighted. And I think the big deal here is Acast Plus, which Mark Maron will also be doing. That's the membership thing, and to have a podcast which has as many listeners as Mark Maron does, that'll be really good. It was with SXM Media, so what goes around comes around.
So are we in the war of acquisition now?
I mean, I think we've been in the war of acquisition for a while. SiriusXM has been buying all kinds of stuff for the last 12 months, and it's been really interesting seeing what they've been purchasing. Every one of these large publishers needs scale, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
Now, we talked about Buzzsprout's ads, and we've talked about Wild Turkey. It's time to reveal all, James. Spotify's advertising banners have been appearing all over Spotify this weekend. What's gone wrong?
Yes, they advertised Wild Turkey as a sponsor of this very podcast, so I thought I would make it. I would make their dreams come true. Now, but the worry is, what they essentially did is they made it the sponsor of every single podcast, which is great for most podcasts, but not if you're a podcast for recovering alcoholics, nor if you're a podcast for kids. So Spotify told me at Pod News that they made a technical error, and they identified the cause and swiftly resolved the matter. But no mention of apologies, no mention of, how embarrassing it could have looked to many podcasters, which I think was a mistake. So I think that they should probably have used the S word, meaning the sorry word. Campari Group, which owns Wild Turkey, seems to be a little bit less forgiving, and has basically said, we're disappointed that the implementation of the campaign by Spotify was inconsistent with our advertising code, I'll say, and have paused all media with Spotify pending results of an investigation. So, I think it's a big mistake by Spotify, but I think the bigger mistake by Spotify has been not to turn around and say, we're really sorry, we messed up, we shouldn't have done that. And I think that was a bit of a false move from there.
Yeah, Spotify's had a bit of a bad week because they've launched porncasts.
Yes, to be fair, not just them. They are on a number of different apps as well. But Alberto, you know a thing or two about these mysterious podcasts that are mostly silent, but they promote call girls. They promote sex workers. What's the deal here?
Yes, so we started to notice this phenomenon, let's call it like that, back in January. And spammers are really creative. They get more and more creative. So they thought they would create a fake podcast with a cover, a title, and a description, so that they would earn a website and web presence and SEO consequently. So that was their first, let's say, their first challenge, creating that podcast. But then they started to submit it to major directories like Spotify, Samsung Podcasts, Amazon Music, and everyone else, except Apple, because Apple approves manually each one of the podcasts. So that's what happened. Basically, we started to see some peaks of these podcasts, and one major company back in January wrote us an email saying, we got 82 podcasts about call girls from you through the API integration. We were sad that we had this kind of notice from these major companies. So we took the weekend to just find a solution, and we improved it over the following months. And in a nutshell, what we did was training a model using the description and the title, the text, basically in the podcast, and we made sure that the model could output a score that told us whether it was spam or not. And after a bit above a certain threshold, we would just kill the podcast immediately. That's what we did. And last week we decided to share with the community our approach and our methods in the hope that everyone else is going to address and mitigate this problem at the source.
Yeah, it's great work that you've done, and you've written it up on Pod News last week to really help other people. I mean, obviously, you've not given people the code, because if they want that, they can buy your company. But you've done a very good job of writing up how you did it. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've been sent a list of more than 500 shows, which many of those are still live on many different platforms. And really interesting. I think also interesting to spot, Sam, that Apple Podcasts lists none of them, because of course Apple Podcasts has an approval process, whereas Spotify and Google Podcasts and others don't have that approval process, and so then automatically added those. And so we're now seeing, Podcast Director is doing a bit of censorship and getting rid of these call girls shows, which I believe is absolutely right. Although, of course, it is technically censorship, but I think it is absolutely right. So and thanks for all of the work that you've done in actually showing people how to get rid of that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You may be busier though. Don't put your hat up just yet.
That's exactly what I meant. We don't lower the guard.
Well, no, I'm just going to say, because, we've had Turkey cast, we've had porn cast, it could be the next political cast. Because for some strange reason, they think they're, doing not too bad. Let's bring back the political ads, say Spotify. That's not going to get you into trouble again, but that's what they've done, James.
Yeah, that's what they've done. It may have something to do with the fact that political advertising, the market in political advertising is $8.5 billion.
Right.
And so therefore, Spotify would obviously like a little bit of that. So so they're bringing back some political advertising, and there's certain rules around what they are bringing back and what they aren't bringing back. Obviously in those countries where that's legal as well. So, we'll see how that works. But yes, Spotify doing an awful lot of work there.
Okay, now moving on. YouTube are here at the London Podcast Show, James. Have you bumped into them at all?
They are, and they've got beautiful posters around the place saying podcasting, 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 YouTube, which is very good. I wonder whether they're going to get into podcasting.
Well, I have an embarrassing story to tell you, James.
Oh, yeah?
It could be the end of a beautiful partnership.
Oh, here we go.
So Ben and I went over to see Sony, and then we decided to go over and see YouTube. And we just thought it was going to be some people on the stand just talking. So we just jokingly went over and said, we're in podcast movement, and you didn't announce it there, and you're clearly not announced it here. When are you going to announce it? Person we actually talked to was Kai.
Yes. Me too, yes. Yeah. And so what did he tell you?
He said, I'm going to get kneecapped if I tell you any more. So that was it. That was the end of the conversation.
I had a long chat with Kai, and it was all off the record. But my suspicion is, the way that Google works is that they normally don't pre-announce things. So they will put something live, and then they'll say, "Hey, look what we've just put live." So my suspicion is that that's going to happen in terms of YouTube, in terms of the podcasting stuff in YouTube. I think there's some interesting stuff around YouTube at the moment. For example, you can't even listen to audio on YouTube and turn your mobile phone screen off. Because the audio stops. So that's not a great experience for podcasts. So there are things I think that they need to change for you can do that, but you have to pay YouTube for YouTube Premium. So I think that there are things that they need to change there, and clearly they need time to end up making that change. My suspicion is podcast movement in Dallas. That's what my suspicion is, but I could well be incredibly wrong.
Fool me once, it's my fault. Fool me twice, it's your fault. Fool me 3 times, Kai, we're going to have words.
And you remember that, of course, I got very excited about Facebook and podcasting, and look what happened to that.
Yeah.
There is, though, some quite good data that we got some data at Pod News. We got some data from PodTrack around data that they've actually grabbed from direct from YouTube and compared to their own data around how successful YouTube is as a podcast platform. And interesting to see. 1 out of 5 of the big podcasts on PodTrack are producing full video podcasts on YouTube already. So interesting to end up seeing that. And also Signal Hill Insights, who are also here, they have released some data around specific podcast apps in the US. And obviously, from that point of view, they see YouTube being the number one, on that as well. I guess, Alberto, from your point of view, you would probably quite like to know if YouTube is doing anything exciting around podcasting so that you can build it into the RSS podcasting app. And I'm sure that Buzzsprout would be wanting that similarly. Do you think that they're going to tip you the wink, or maybe they have tipped you the wink and you're not allowed to tell me?
So they answer to our question whether an implementation now before the announcement would maintain retrocompatibility in case they announce something new, and they told us here today that it would be retrocompatible. So we are launching a publish to YouTube button, and what we feel is that they're going to ingest RSS feeds. Perhaps they're going to add dynamic ad insertion with rev share. We don't have information there, so I'm speaking out of ignorance, right? But we do know that if a company like ours implements a YouTube integration, it's going to be retrocompatible for a while, so it's not churn.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it should be really interesting, and I'm actually very excited about. Given that YouTube has all of this monetization options, I'm really excited about that. You're listening to Podland, and we are in the Shure podcast studio. It would be only polite to find out a little bit more about Shure and about their beautiful, beautiful microphones. So earlier on, I talked with Jack from Shure.
So we're here because, the podcasting world has boomed, right? We accidentally have the best and most industry standard mic for podcasting in the industry, which is the SM7B. And our big task here today is to tie our brand to that microphone. There's lots of people that are out there using it and recognize it, but not many people associate it with it being a Shure product. So we're here to try and reinforce that message. There's also a little bit of, misuse around it. If the SM7B, if you don't use it with, a good enough preamp or a cloud lifter, you don't get the most out of it. So we're trying to help people sound better. And if you're not an SM7B level client yet, if you're not kind of at that price point, we've got our MV7 here, which kind of sits just a rung below that, but has USB and XLR connectivity, a lot of processing in it. So if you're just starting out with podcasting, you get an excellent sound with all of the kind of compression and EQ that you'd want. A really, a good price point, and it's very SM7B sounding.
Yes, and that's the one that I've got. I've got a Shure MV7 at home, and I'm carting around my battered up Shure MV5, which is a small sort of round thing that I use when I'm recording overseas after the incident. We don't talk about the incident. Thank you, TSA, for ruining a very expensive microphone I once owned. And it does look as if you've got a lot of different types of microphones here for different different applications.
We do. We've bought. What have we got here? We've got SM7B. We've got MV7. We've bought our MV7X, which is the kind of MV7 microphone, but without the USB engine, so much more SM7B, I guess, but cheaper. And then we've got other microphones for different price points and different applications. So, we were just talking about the MV88 Plus, which is a really cool dual diaphragm microphone. And it's two cardioid diaphragms, but by combining them in different ways, we get lots of different polar patterns. So we can do a narrow stereo, a wide stereo. We can have kind of an interview figure of 8. We can have a cardioid. So, that ticks a lot of boxes if you're out recording Foley or doing interview situations like this. It's really small. It comes with a stand. That's been quite a popular one to talk about today as well. And obviously we've got your trusty MV5C and our MV51 as well, which we've had in the portfolio for a while.
Yes, this isn't even the MV5C. This is just the old MV5. But it's a fantastic workhorse, and I've had it for quite some time. Yeah, it's really interesting to see you here. Really interesting to see. I mean, there are a couple of other mic manufacturers here, but interesting to see that you are here. Really in force. You also make, I discover, headphones too. I wasn't aware that Shure made headphones. Is that a brand new thing, or have you been doing that for a while?
Doing headphones for ages. I mean, we're a transducer manufacturer, really. So transducers will be found in microphones. Transducers will be found in headphones as well. The technology is exactly the same, and we're big in studios. I think if you're making studio products, it would make sense and be quite logical to have some headphones. And we've got lots of closed back designs, which I think are the ones, that the podcast show will be particularly interested in. So, once you put them on, they're completely silent. And we've just redesigned those products as well. So we're here with the 840, mainly is the one that we're pushing today, which we've just recently redesigned with a slightly different frequency response, which is really cool. And we've got our in-ears as well. So if you're performing on stage or you don't like a big set of over-ear cans, then we've got some really nice, comfortable in-ears that just slot in and go behind the back of the head, and you can wear them for hours and hours and hours.
And of course, very useful for podcasters because of YouTube and YouTube podcasting. And it's been very interesting as well, wandering around here saying podcasting, YouTube everywhere. So that's been really good. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for allowing us to use your studio in a bit too.
Absolute pleasure. Yes, enjoy.
Shure mics, they are wonderful.
Aren't they just?
This is my first time on one.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so I use a Shure mic all the time when I'm recording in my normal home office, and it's great to be here. It's great to see the amount of different mics that they've got. So, and also they're very beautiful, if swelteringly hot studio.
Sweltering hot studio. Yes, layers of clothing are disappearing rapidly as we talk. So we're moving on.
Yeah.
Now, James,
No, don't take that off.
It's the bourbon and wild turkey, James. It's making me do it. Now, James, you caught up with Limonada a couple of weeks ago.
I did indeed, yes. Lemonada Media are a fascinating company. They're an audio-first podcast network. They have a mission to make life suck less, and I was curious as to what that meant. They're also working on a brand new genre as well, so I caught up with Jessica Cordova-Kramer.
We're a podcast network first and foremost, and we're a full-service network. We're about 3 years old. We do everything from podcast production all the way through ad sales, distribution, marketing, and namely, we create audio that tries to make life suck less. And frankly, who doesn't need that and want that these days? So that's what we do. We do everything in-house, and we're about 60 staff members coast to coast.
And I love the audio that tries to make your life suck less. What do you mean by that?
The origin story of the network, I don't know how much you know about it, but I lost my beloved little brother, Stefano, in 2017 to an overdose. And in the course of, grieving the way one does, which is like partially falling apart, and I have 2 kids, so partially putting one foot in front of the other, I discovered a podcast. It had this woman named Stephanie Whittles-Wax on it, who is my co-founder of Lemonada. Fast forward to now, and she had lost her little brother the same way. Her brother's Harris Whittles from Parks and Rec and Master of None, and invented the word humble brag, and just an incredible dude. So, we came together. I was making Pod Save the People at the time with Crooked Media. Steph is a voice actress, best-selling author, theater director, teacher. Took our 2 skill sets, said this particular horrible thing that had happened to us is one of many, many challenging things people are dealing with in the world. No matter what body they woke up in, no matter where they live, life can be challenging sometimes. And in the time where we launched Lemonada in 2019, pre-pandemic, it was challenging in multitudes. And so we said, let's fill the space. Let's make audio that gets you out of bed in the morning, and that tries to make your life a little bit or a lot better. So that's the goal, and all of our shows kind of fit in that general rubric, though we have tons of different styles of podcasts under the network.
And you've had tremendous success, and one of the things that you have recently done is invented a brand new genre for podcasting. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're calling it audio reality. I'm sure many people listening are like, I had this idea, but it was mid-pandemic. Steph and I Stephanie and I were running our company, growing our company, making podcasts, and we were doing a lot of what everyone else was doing during the early stages of the pandemic, which is desperately looking for any kind of escapism content. So you may have watched Tiger King, you may have finally discovered Great British Bake Off, whatever your tastes were. She and I were watching a lot of reality TV, and the kind that was like just basic, just the stuff that you Love Island, for example, was my cup of tea. Hers was 90 Day Fiancé. So we are very esoteric and cerebral when it comes to our own network, but our relaxo states were something else. And our theory of change around making life suck less is empathy. It's not politics. It's not screaming at each other. It's not we have the solutions. It's first person storytelling. If you understand what it's like to be James, you'll be a lot nicer to James. That is our theory. So we thought, man, we're watching all this reality. What if we took this concept, this idea that you got to watch someone else in their life doing their thing, whether they're dating and trying to find love or baking their way to British stardom. Let's take this concept into the audio space. The radicalness that we were thinking about was like no narrator, no host. This is truly verite. But neither, we got to a point, we wrote up a treatment, it was beautiful. We got to the end of the treatment. We were like, we don't know anything about television, so how on earth are we going to do this? And so we hired this incredible woman who is now the executive producer of Being Studios, Casey Barrett, who made The Real World. She made The Kardashians, and she made Making the Cut and Born This Way. which is a 3-season documentary on people with Down syndrome. Just a joyful, wonderful human being. She did a design sprint with us last summer. We got to the end of it and we were like, "You're hired. Do you want the job?" And she's built out this whole studio. It's called Being Studios. The idea is we get to bring you into worlds and you get to be other people. And each season will bring you into a wildly different world. So Being Trans is season 1. It's out now. And we're casting right now for our second season, which is Being Golden. And we'll follow people who are 55 plus.
Wow. I mean, we know that reality TV can make stars. I believe you have a thing called Kim Kardashian in your country.
I've heard of her.
Yeah.
I've heard of her.
We also know that podcasting these days has an eye on the IP that podcasts can generate. Do you think you can also make big stars with these shows as well?
I think so. I mean, you'll have to listen and tell us what you think. We wanted to create something beautiful, captivating, interesting, and non-exploitive. So, you're going to hear wholesome conversations. There's real conflict that comes up for each of our cast members throughout the course of the show. Everything from figuring out how to date for the first time in a new body in a new city, to marital issues, to child rearing, you name it. So yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there are some stars on the show. But we'll see. Mm-hmm. We'll see what people think.
Is this purely an ad-funded thing, or would it work with a subscription base as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could work with a subscription base. On our Apple Premium channel, we're putting out lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of bonus content this season. There's already a little bit there, and we'll be putting out more and more as we go and build the subscriber base across all of our channels. We'll probably put out a little bit of bonus content later this season too. But, it's like, I don't know if you remember when fictional podcasts started to become a thing. It's like people were like, "What's that? I don't know if I want to listen to fiction." So this is new. And, I think in any kind of business where you're thinking about bringing people behind a paywall potentially, which we don't typically do at Lemonada, you need some volume first. So we're out there making a case for a new type of audio before thinking about anything other than our typical business model, which is ad-supported.
I did a session at Podcast Movement Evolutions about subscription podcasting, and it was fascinating. Donald Albright was saying that he was, one of the real benefits you got from subscription was actually promotion. Nothing to do with the revenue. It was more to do with the fact that, Apple would really push your stuff if there was a premium side to it as well. How have you found the whole subscription side of this industry over the last 9 months or so? Do you think it's going somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, we're in it with all of our partners. Like, because we're trying to make life suck less, like, we don't charge for our content, so it is ad supported. So we want people to listen wherever they listen, right? And every single one of our partners has a different thing it needs from us, and we have one thing we need it from all of them, which is placement and support and visibility. So we're just, we're constantly in conversation as the industry is ebbing and flowing with all of our partners: Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, TuneIn, to try to figure out the best way to support one another. And that is changing every 20 minutes. It's changing every 20 minutes. And I think what Lemonada has been able to do is the quality of the content is high. It looks beautiful. It's diverse. It's easy to make a case for. It's very rarely political. So it's a kind of a dream when you're a platform and you're like, I need editorial that helps my flow case look great. And when I click on it, the show titles make sense. And then when I listen to it, it's not terrible. This is like the, and then just work together operationally well, so that people are getting what they need.
Yeah. We had Steve Jones from Crowd Network on recently. He was telling us that Apple have been really helpful recently with him as a network, and really wanting to promote his output on Apple. And he said that Spotify seems to have changed a little bit. And I wondered where you saw the big platforms in terms of the promotional work that you do.
I mean, we're doing a big thing with Spotify coming up, and obviously Apple's been giving us a tremendous amount of support on Being, but also really on everything since we've started. So I don't know. I think when you're running a big company or you're part of a vertical in a big company like Spotify or Apple. February looks different from March. March looks different from April. So we're always like, and you get my insider email, or Lizzie on our team sends our insider email each month to all of our platform partners, folks like you, other people in the network, to be like, here's what we've got going on. Because we know people are sitting there at Spotify or at TuneIn or wherever, and they're like, oh, this solves my problem for Black History Month. Great. It's Mental Health Awareness Month in May. Lemonade has got something for me. Fabulous. So we're trying to serve that need. So I don't know if things are like, if Spotify's changing. I have no idea. I think they're looking to figure out, the podcast team was so small for a while. It's just starting to grow, and working with creators more to think about the user experience within Spotify and how to discover different podcasts is, I think, more of a priority than it was before. But I don't know. It's May 2022. We'll see what September brings. Your guess is as good as mine, and we're just around to do what we can to get our stuff out there.
Well, it's great to catch up. Many congratulations on your success. I'm also very pleased to hear that the aeroplanes are working again in the US.
Oh, do you hear that? Is there a lot of room tone? I live on the flight path.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, James.
I've spotted this, but it's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Jess. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Jessica Cordova-Kramer from Lemonade Media. All this month in Pod News as well, they've been sharing their best shows in my newsletter as well. So I thank them for their support.
Yeah, it's great to see them trying to create new genres as well. I thought that was an interesting idea.
Yeah, and I think, audio reality is a really interesting thing. They've been doing this kind of stuff, TV companies have been doing this kind of stuff for a long, long time. And so great to actually see them play around with that in terms of audio as well. So Being Trans is available wherever you get your podcasts. What is it that I normally say? Your favourite podcast app and in Spotify. That's what I normally say. Moving on.
We're never going to get to that party tonight with Spotify.
They won't let me in. This is pointless.
Have you heard of Joe Rogan?
Oh, I think so.
Have you listened to Joe Rogan?
No.
No, nor have I. Have you, Alberto?
No, I haven't.
No, three of us are not there. But strangely, in the US, Joe Rogan reaches at least twice as many people as the most popular show.
Yeah, as the next most popular show. You're right. Yeah, this is new data released by Edison Research, and Larry Rosen posting a really fascinating bit of data around the long tail there. But it is massive. I was having an annoyingly off-the-record chat with Larry about really how big Joe Rogan is, and if you were to look at young people, how many young people in the US he reaches. But he is easily larger than any radio show in the country. He's a very large person. Yeah.
And very rich as well.
Indeed.
Now, it's time to end the podcast, James, I believe, because short podcasts are what advertisers want.
I was wondering where you were going there.
Well, there you go.
What, already?
That and the black hole of Calcutta that we're in. It seems ad buyers want to buy short podcast ads, but podcasts are pitching for longer ones. What's going on?
I thought this was a bit of a miserable story from Digiday. They were basically saying podcasters are pitching longer ads because they earn more money, don't they? And so they wouldn't they? And ad buyers just want to buy 30-second ads. But in reality, not really, because actually podcasters want to offer brands shows that adverts that they know work, and so therefore the whole point of offering somebody advertising is advertising that actually works for the client. But I thought it was an interesting take that they had.
Alberto, sprechen Sie Deutsch?
No, I don't speak.
He speaks Italian and English. What other languages do you speak?
Spanish and a bit of French.
You see, James, anything from you apart from English?
No.
Well,
I can say though, you've got a very big bottom in Japanese. I'm not quite sure how useful that's going to be, but nevertheless, that's a phrase that I have.
Can I just say, even if you told me, I'm not sure. I'd have to still Google it to make sure you weren't telling me something else. Entry onto customs. Yes, you can go in their jail for the night, sir.
And we're saying this because German company Podstars has released the podcast survey 2022 of 2,000 German podcast listeners. And it turns out that they're interesting people, aren't they, Sam?
That's not the expression I've ever used, but yes. They tend to like the vast majority of their shows tend to be new shows to listen to via social media, and they tend to purchase a lot of podcast subscriptions as well.
Yeah, 22% of German podcast listeners have bought a podcast subscription so far, which seems incredibly high to me. I mean, Alberto, I wouldn't have thought. Do you think that figure is right?
It seems very high to me as well.
Yeah, that is fascinating. So I'm really interested in seeing that data, but you'll find that linked from our show notes and at podland.news.
Now, the one thing I'm glad is the Germans never invented the word podcast, because you know how they expressed everything as a literal word. I think podcasting would have been 26 or 7 letters long otherwise. Anyway, moving along. Podinbox is now focusing on producing a fan page for podcasters. Tell me more.
Yes, they are. So Podinbox started in August last year as a voice messaging service. So that it was basically a way of leaving a message for your favourite podcasters, although since we don't use it, not leaving a message for us. But anyway, that's still part of what Podinbox is, but Podinbox is now producing fan pages for podcasters, which has an awful lot more information in there. You can donate, there's leaderboards, there's message tips, there's all kinds of things. You'll actually find a Podnews Podinbox page if you search hard enough. So interested in seeing them doing a little bit of a pivot there. Also, Transistor today launched a set of free podcast websites for podcasters. I think they're using that as a lead generation tool, but again, interesting to see companies doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, Josh Shen from JustCast pinged me on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. They're working on a podcast page as well, and so they sent us a little demo of our own page, and I had a look at it. Alberto, is RSS.com going to be branching out into producing podcast pages for your clients as well?
Well, we do produce it for our client, but as an external service, public service to generate leads.
Yeah.
We may, but apparently, as of today, it's not worth it. Already, everyone is doing that. So we're going to roll out a couple of new features that we are going to make available to the public.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if we're going to do the public pages.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Well, that's really cool. And you also seemed to leak a brand new feature in your big article about spotting naughty podcasts. You managed to leak in the middle of that you're producing transcripts for all RSS.com users in what you call summer in the next few months, which is really exciting.
Yeah. So we built a model in-house in order to create transcript in a very cheap fashion.
Yeah.
This way we can offer draft transcript to pre-fill the transcript fields of the podcasting 2.0 tag, and people can edit them. But we can also use those transcripts in order to train our machine learning model for spam podcasts. Yeah. And we think everyone should do that. It's a matter of looking for open source software that allows transcription and is commercially exploitable, and implementing something simple, but it's better than nothing. And then you can always offer the premium feature where you plug into AWS Transcript, Google, or Assembly AI, and many others.
Yeah, no, really interesting, and I think that's going to be a great thing, and it's great that you're supporting the Podcasting 2.0 transcript as well, which is good stuff. And there's a number of new tools, Sam. The first one I've got here is a tool from Audio Labs, which is basically converts Twitter Spaces to YouTube. So Twitter Spaces are lovely, but they go away after 30 days. They just get automatically deleted by Twitter, because obviously Elon hasn't given them enough money yet to...
They should host on RSS.com. They won't have to delete after 30 days then.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a wonderful thing. But so Audio Labs is a new automatic tool which will essentially grab a Twitter Spaces and turn that into a fancy YouTube video with lots of images and stuff, which is quite cool. So that's one of the new tools. Yeah.
I mean, also this week on Chris Messina sent us a link about the new Twitter Creator tools as well. So they've created some friendly pages if you're a podcaster to go and see how to create more Twitter Spaces and how to optimize that if you're a podcaster.
Yeah, it's very cool to see Twitter doing some interesting things there. Superpass is a tool to make websites and a tool to make websites for your podcast, but also a mobile app. It's a new tool which is launched on Product Hunt. One place to send your audience for your podcast, courses, blog, videos, memberships, and subscriptions. So yet another person making websites for podcasts.
Well, we interviewed Julia way back, actually.
Oh, yes, so we did.
Yes.
So we did. Friend of the show, therefore.
Indeed.
And Audio Audit is a tool which checks online audio quality. I gave it Pod News. I think it gave me a relatively high score, but it checks for loudness and swear words and encoding issues. It didn't like my encoding. Way too low, it said. And metadata and everything else. So it's quite a nice tool just to check that you're doing everything right.
One more thing, James. Roadcaster, g'day. One of your friends from Down Under. Are you missing home yet?
I'm not looking forward to the plane back, but yes, Rode have launched the Rodecaster Pro 2. It was leaked last week. It's launched now. It goes on sale in about 18 days. There's one here, I believe, at the podcast show. I've not actually seen it, but in the flesh. Have you seen the one in the flesh here?
I will tonight. It's arrived at my house.
Oh, you've bought it and you've already got it.
It's at home. I saw it delivered.
Wow.
Yes. So when I get home tonight, I will be doing an unboxing and setting it all up for tomorrow in the studio.
Well, how exciting.
You know me, James. If it's a new toy, I have to buy it.
Yes. Although, actually plugging it in and getting it working, umbrel.
Oh, yeah. But I'm not that interested in that.
Right, let's do a little bit of tech stuff.
So an interesting library that's been released. If you want to add the ability for people to boost a show using the Bitcoin Lightning Network on your website, there's a library that's come out. It supports WebLN. It's compatible plugin. So have you seen it, tried it, played with it?
I haven't played with it yet, but it's a nice idea. So if you have Albi, which is a Google Chrome extension, it will automatically spot that, and you will automatically see a boost button, and you can boost some sats. It sounds like an interesting thing that is a possibility that you might be adding, Alberto, to rss.com podcast pages in the fullness of time if it seems a success.
Yes, that's correct. We have been trying Albi after you announced it in Pod News, and we have a call with them in a couple of weeks. It's interesting, although there is a lot of friction in using a web page rather than native apps. I think that really we need to do there is a chasm between the donation from a web page where the consumption of podcast is very limited to the apps. So that's where we need to go, and that's why we need a centralized app that is a showcase for all these new features. That's what we think.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder whether that's something that podcasters or podcast companies who are interested in podcasting 2.0, I wonder whether that's something that actually we all might fund together to actually produce an app which is a spec app, which just basically shows what all of these tools might look like. Sort of a reference app is, I guess, what I'm looking at. And I wonder whether there's opportunities there of taking, AntennaPod, which is a great open source podcast app but has none of the podcasting 2.0 features in there, and actually adding all of that in there. I don't know, maybe that's
actually that was part of the conversations here in London with other companies, other colleagues, and there is the appetite. So from our end, count on us, and we already have other major companies that want to start this project together.
Great. No, that would be a really interesting thing to be.
You heard it here first.
Didn't we just? And if you're listening to the Podcasting 2.0 show with Adam and the Pod Sage, then they are talking all about IPFS podcasting. If you would like to be hosted on the Interplanetary Filing System, which I always think is just a fantastic name.
FAB, Scotty.
Yes. It's a way to reduce bandwidth costs, or, you could just get a podcast on Buzzsprout, which is the most sensible thing. Buzzsprout.com. Other podcast hosts are available. Then yes, if you're interested, though, in the IPFS It's just a way of hosting your podcast on a distributed network, and it means that nobody can actually take your podcast away, or at least not for a while. So take a listen. You'll find the Podcasting 2.0 app in any new podcast apps, and if you can't find it, newpodcastapps.com.
Moving on then. Now we're here at the London Podcast Show, and we had a great week, or I've had a great week here, or 3 or 4 days. But there are some other events to put in your diary. The first one is Podfest, which is going on now in Orlando. So a bit late if you can't go to it, but we might find out what's going on over there.
Yes, no, that should be good fun. Going on in Buzzsprout's home. And indeed Squadcast's home state, I believe. And of course, Podcast Movement 2022 is the next big event, which is in Dallas, in Texas, on August the 23rd. I really must book my flights. That would be a very clever idea. So that'll be really good fun and looking forward to as well. And then there's the International Women's Podcast Festival, which is on June the 18th. Pinterest is the sponsor of that. And if you would like to get there for a bit cheaper, then you can do just that. If you're outside the UK, use Podnews 50 to get 50% off virtual tickets. And if you're in the UK, you can use Podnews 25 to get 25% off in-person tickets.
And if you want to find out about more podcasting events, go to pod.events.
Yes. So what's been happening for you this week in Podland, Sam?
Well, we hosted the first Podland Drinks, James, on Tuesday night.
We did, didn't we? That was great fun. You magically found this pub, which was in the middle of a maze in Belgravia.
It was an intelligence test, James.
Fairy tale pub.
Yeah. But it was a lovely pub. That was a very enjoyable time. So it was good for you to organise that, and also the first time that I've ever seen in my life a convertible Rolls-Royce. Why would you do a convertible Rolls-Royce?
Come on, you must have seen one before. Lady Penelope and Thunderbirds.
I didn't see that.
No, it was a good evening. Some great people attended, so thank you for everyone who came along. We'll do another one at another event in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I have been driving around Britain for the first time in 6 years, driving a stick shift car for the first time in 6 years. The good news is I'm off the road now, Great Britain, so that's okay. But a really enjoyable driving it down to Wales. The weirdest thing, though, I was driving down to Wales, listening to LBC, my radio station of choice, and all of a sudden the ad break comes on, and there's an ad for the podcast show. And it's the first time I've ever heard an ad for a conference that I have been speaking at. So that was really weird. But yeah, I've just been having a great time over the last couple of days. And the best thing was that they booked me as the first speaker, and they gave me quite a small room, which meant that the room was not just overflowing in terms of people standing up, but also you couldn't even get in, which is very good if you're a speaker.
And after 10 minutes, they couldn't get out either.
Oh dear. And he's here all week, folks. But that's it for this week. If you like Podland, tell others to visit. Tell your friends on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, MySpace, or wherever.
And we were live on YouTube last week, James. You can also email us at comments@podland.news. You'll also find all our previous shows and interviews at podland.news.
If you want daily news, you should get Pod News. The newsletter is free at podnews.net. Don't look at it this week and think that it's rushed, because no, it's not been rushed. The podcast can be found in your podcast app too, and all the stories we've discussed on Podland today are in the show notes. We use chapters and transcripts too.
Our music is from Ignite Jingles, and we're hosted and sponsored by our good friends Buzzsprout and Squadcast.
Keep listening.